Awesome. Well, we're looking at the video stuff. We'll see if we can get it figured out. If not, we've got the presentation, so we should be good there. Really, the quick background. So Nicholas and myself got together and wanted to talk more about, really this movement in drop shipping and distributed order management, and kind of how our solution helps kind of this progression towards this new supply chain approach to the supply chain, really, in this evolving retail world. And, Eric is one of our mutual customers that is both on Flxpoint and using Shiphero. And he's going to talk a little bit about his experiences, how he has it configured, really giving you an idea of what that looks like. So with that, we'll see if we get video figured out. If not, I'll go ahead and get jumped right into this presentation. Oh, there you go, Nicholas. Who needs video? You're right there.
I apologize. That was one of my worst moments.
So yeah, myself, like I mentioned, Travis, CEO of Flxpoint, we're a distributed order management system. Nicholas, I'll let you kind of give a quick background.
Sure. I'm Nicholas, co-founder and troublemaker at Shiphero.
All right. I've got word we should be able to start video now, so let's see if it allows us. Nope. All still sounds.
Yeah. It says you can't start your video because gingers are not allowed. No, it says because the host has stopped it. So whatever that is. I don't know if I need to reload or whatever.
Zoom is pretty serious.
Yeah.
Forbid record is one of the options I have here.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So either way, there's Nicholas. Eric, we'll have to send out a picture of you to everyone. So all right, I'll go ahead and jump into the agenda. So we're first going to talk really about the rise in distributed fulfillment. I'm not going to talk too much about this. I'm not going to go into too much in-depth here because if you've seen any of my webinars, I do talk a lot about this. You can always go and search Flxpoint on YouTube and talk more about it, and learn more about it. But we will give a quick overview for those who aren't familiar with distributed fulfillment and distributed order management. Eric's going to jump in and kind of talk a little bit about, his setup with Shiphero and how he works with his customers using Flxpoint and Shiphero. And then I'm going to go into a quick demo, like we talked about, a tactical guide actually showing you the features and functionality within Flxpoint that helps you execute on distributed order management. I'll kick it over to Nicholas there, and we'll do a Shiphero kind of WMS and fulfillment services overview, as well as a demo, and then we'll jump into QA from there. So I'll get started. So really, we talk about distributed fulfillment and drop shipping becoming popular in this evolving retail landscape. It's really because we're in this era of e-commerce and Amazon that's being accelerated now more than ever. Retailers really being forced to significantly increase their digital catalog size, more products on their website, on their store, and then really supporting fast, often free shipping. So, Amazon has really kind of pushed the bar there on, set the bar and push the limits really on what you need to be able to do as a retailer to gain consumers on the internet. So increasing catalog size is one. Adding more products to your catalog online is tough to do, and also supporting cheap fulfillment across the United States or even internationally is even tougher to do. And then really kind of bring on new, smaller, trendy brands is definitely a trend we're seeing, and increases a lot of the difficulties in just onboarding in general. So all of that kind of those macroeconomic forces have kind of led to distributed or fulfillment and distributed order management, right? And so what that means is traditionally in the supply chain, what we've seen for decades is a large department store, a large online retailer will buy, send a large PO to their supplier, their warehouse, right, of product. And they will get in that large PO of product in their own warehouse or in their own brick and mortar store, and they'll sell it online through their website, or they'll sell it through their brick and mortar store. So it's very infrequent orders, monthly, quarterly, whatever it might be, large risk, large buying of product. And that's really what the traditional supply chain was set up to do. Distributed fulfillment is more along the lines of having inventory distributed, as it sounds, across multiple warehouses, whether it's your own internal warehouse, whether it's also located in your brick and mortar location, your third-party warehouse that you may have, partnered with someone like a Shiphero and are storing your inventory in a third-party warehouse because of, international needs, or having another warehouse on the West Coast. And then even drop shipping, which is essentially buying the product after the consumer buys it on your website, buying it from your supplier after the fact, and having them ship out that one single order on your behalf, right? So all of that kind of all those possibilities when it comes to fulfilling a single order and trying to orchestrate that is kind of the complexity and the benefit of distributed fulfillment. You can kind of see how having the inventory in multiple different locations, as well as having quick access with low risk of inventory, can benefit those trends I showed earlier and those needs as we go more online. So this is distributed fulfillment, much more difficult, much more complex, but a lot of upside when you can actually implement something like this. Now, there's three real main components of distributed fulfillment: third-party logistics warehousing, right? So working with a company to warehouse your inventory in their warehouses. The dropshipping fulfillment model, where we saw, empowering retailers to hold or to sell inventory that they don't actually have to buy up front and take on the inventory risk or keep in their warehouse. And then the ship from store, or the buy online, pick up in store approach, right? And more of that happening. So converting your brick and mortar to almost a little bit of a micro fulfillment warehouse to be able to ship those out. So, this really does empower retailers and brands with more efficient shipping, allows you, brands to ship direct versus having to sell through distributors and cut out margin. Even, with the third party side, it allows brands to start drop shipping when they couldn't have done it themselves because they don't have the warehouse resources or team or capacity, whatever it might be. We talked about the inventory risk and dropping that with the fulfillment model. So a lot of just benefits to implementing it. And it's really across these three components that we see it being implemented. So there's challenges on both sides, right? We'll start with the retailer side. If a retailer is wanting to increase their catalog and reduce shipping costs and times, they look to distributed fulfillment to implement, that to try to achieve these. But now they're relying on suppliers to drop ship and cross dock. So a lot of that trust has to go into their suppliers. Not only just relying that they're actually going to ship it, but can they trust the data? Syncing and trusting the inventory quantities, a big piece of that. When an order comes in, how do you orchestrate that order between those 4 different locations I showed in that previous slide of, your own warehouse, your own brick and mortar store, a third party warehouse, a dropshipper? How do you make sense of that and do that automatically and at scale? And then how do you pay for these POs as they come through? Very high volume, very different from the traditional side of things. Okay. And then from a brand side, they also face these, and Eric can talk a little bit more about this, but the retail partners are asking for dropship. They're asking for cross-docking. So how do you deliver on that? You have your own warehouse now. You're one of those warehouses, right? In the node, the multi-node setup of a distributed fulfillment configuration. So how do you start accepting daily POs, both from dropshipping and cross-docking? Cross-docking, for those who aren't familiar, it's basically taking in a single order, consumer order from your retail partner, sending it actually to a retail warehouse, and then the retail warehouse sending it on to the end consumer's residential address. Makes sense for certain scenarios, similar to drop shipping in that way, that it's a little bit more of a complex order fulfillment challenge. Pricing products and providing inventory, right? So you're used to selling wholesale and getting these large POs. How do you start pricing? How do you, manage the different pricing for wholesale orders versus dropship orders? How do you provide inventory? Managing that is very difficult. Shipping and branding, shipping and then just branded packing slips. So you now are shipping directly to the consumer's address. You might not be used to that. You might have not started direct to consumer like a lot of brands are today. And not only that, even if you are direct to consumer, how do you brand the packing slip specifically for your retail partners? Because they're going to want it to appear like they came from the retailer versus the actual supplier. Something called blind drop shipping, a big challenge to face. And then invoice payment, returns management, same kind of thing. More high volume, more transactions, a little bit more difficult to implement. So with that, Eric, I'm going to turn it over to you. I've kind of got your setup here. As far as how you use it, we want to look at the supplier's perspective first. So Eric is a B2B, he's a supplier of product. And so Eric, I'll let you kind of just talk through how you're using Shiphero today, how you're using Flxpoint, and kind of just how it benefits your flow and how it gives you kind of a competitive advantage. Would be kind of great to hear.
Sure. I'd love to explain that, Travis. So what we're mainly finding with, a lot of dealers that are doing the drop shipping is they were sending us things manually before, and that's just not scalable. So we were getting all these orders via email, and then they're always asking for tracking. So the tracking was, not flowing to the dealers because everything's coming to us manually. They weren't having the time to log in due to the high volume of orders. They can't log into our e-commerce website and search easily the tracking. So it's just basically a giant mess, giant cluster. So we reached out to you for the Flxpoint setup, and it's been a night and day difference. We're able to integrate with all of our retail partners that we're doing drop shipping for, and Flxpoint either integrates with their inventory source or directly to their websites, depending on the situation, through the API. And we actually ship through Shiphero as well. So Shiphero is our complete WMS. So when we ship in Shiphero, it'll automatically route the tracking back from Shiphero to Flxpoint, which then will push to our retailer. And that was one of the major pain points, is pushing the tracking back. And we are able to do the branded packing slips, like you were speaking about. Shiphero, and Nicholas, maybe you can speak to this. It's nice seeing you and meeting you right now. Looks like our video finally went live here.
Yes, I'm sorry, everybody that has to look at our faces, specifically mine. You guys are beautiful.
Well, this is my good side, right?
Yeah, nice.
So and I'm not even sure if Shiphero is even designed for business to business. To me, it seems like obviously it has a lot of features that we use for that. But maybe you can speak to that later in the call. But we actually use the warehouses feature, the My Warehouses, is what we're doing for our the retailers that we drop ship. So we're able to add basically a virtual warehouse, essentially, which allows us to upload the dealer's logo, the dealer's address, the dealer's support email, and the dealer's phone number. And then every time we drop ship for a dealer, that's a packing slip that gets printed out, and we just throw in the box, and it doesn't have the dealer's cost or anything on it. It's just got the quantity and the SKU. And I mean, if I was a retail customer receiving a shipment from the Shiphero, packing list, packing slip, I would have no idea that it was actually a drop ship. It's probably next to impossible for them to figure it out. So, and that's what our retailers want. But Flxpoint has been absolutely key with keeping track of the orders as well that have been coming to us, in addition to pushing the tracking back once it's fulfilled. So the dealers are sending us these orders through their own Flxpoint or through inventory source or from some other way, and we're able to easily manage all those orders and search, and then now recently able to push that also into Shiphero too. And that integration is just a seamless integration for us, and allows us to scale. We've seen drop ships increase significantly in our industry specifically. When you go from pandemic riots to defunding police, I mean, you tend to get a lot of orders, and Shiphero and Flxpoint have allowed us to essentially quadruple our volume with minimal staff increases in just a matter of 2 or 3 months. And I mean, without Flxpoint and Shiphero, there'd be absolutely no way we could even come close to to quadrupling our revenue in just that short of amount of time.
I appreciate that, Eric, and I know you guys have faced different demands recently, right? I mean, we've always kind of had people coming through the inventory source app and placing orders directly into Flxpoint, but recently getting requests for those to just manually have a checkout, so using the dealer portal. I know a big piece as you start working with larger retailers is being EDI compliant, and the ability to just give them an EDI file, things like that. So, no, I appreciate you kind of talk about that, because that's what it's about, right? Is being able to scale and not have to hire heads and throw bodies at it as you grow in order volume.
Exactly. And I mean, the only thing I'd like to add too is, even the retailers that we've been partnered with that have been using something like inventory, they've been using inventory source, like we're starting to actually see those retailers hungry for more technology and hungry for a better solution. I mean, I know that one of our main retailers that just recently switched from inventory source to Flxpoint, like I know they ship through, Shipstation, for example, and I'm thinking to me like, man, they're moving so much volume. I know what Shipstation is. I can't imagine trying to like figure out if something's shipped or not just by a one function, cloud software, if you will. Like they should really be on something like, Shiphero, honestly. So you know, that'll be my next talk. So we're seeing a giant trend.
I'll pay you later for that one, Eric. Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'll accept the kickbacks. I'm not gonna turn down any kickbacks.
Nice.
I'll give you that. But you know, but it's not something it's not something a lot of companies know they need until they're told about it, honestly. And once they're told about it, you can very easily show them that, hey, this is gonna, like Travis was just saying, eliminate the head count. Instead of throwing more money and throwing more people at it, why don't you throw more technology at it? And that's worked really well for us, and I recommend that to our dealers as well. So hopefully everyone that's attending this webinar today can learn more about Flxpoint and Shiphero, and if it fits for their company, move forward with that.
Awesome. Eric, I really appreciate that, man. It's good to kind of hear just kind of how you have it set up and how it's working for you.
You're welcome.
Cool. So jumping on to the next slide, I've just got a couple. So that was really the supplier side, right? So as we mentioned, Eric uses the multi-warehousing capability, the virtual warehousing capability in Shiphero, and it has multiple dealers, sending in drop shipments to him. A big part of the retail side is sending those orders and deciding, do I send it to my Shiphero warehouse, right? My warehouse that is using Shiphero. Do I send it to a drop ship supplier that might be using whatever technology? Do I send it directly to my brick and mortars? So, just to kind of show the diagrams here on the retailer side, order comes in from a consumer. If you're an online retailer, one thing that you need to be doing is delivering and syncing up inventory specifically to any one of these channels. You might be selling on a Shopify store, Magento store. You might also be selling the same products on Amazon or Walmart, wherever. So the one thing you need to be doing is definitely syncing across these multiple locations. So pulling from your internal warehouse directly from Shiphero, combining that inventory with maybe the same product from your dropship supplier, even leveraging the Shiphero fulfillment network, where you might have that stored for an international purpose or whatever it might be. So the first part is really having that inventory sync so you're not selling things that are out of stock. Secondly, once you receive an actual order from Shopify, it's now generating a purchase order, and traditionally a purchase order to your supplier, but it's going to be that one specific dropship purchase order, sent directly from an API or EDI perspective to your supplier. Maybe it's sent via email and CSV, whatever they require. We're going to be placing orders directly into Shiphero for those that you decide make the most sense for a warehouse perspective, and even using the multi-warehouse function to decide if it should go somewhere else. So I think we're at, let's see, timing wise, I want to make sure we're good. I'm going to, that's really kind of the overview here. I do want to get into the demo and leave Nicholas some time here. So I'm going to jump right into the demo, but essentially, the tracking and invoices are going back as well to kind of really fully automate that whole side of things. And the big part of the demo here, I'll show you in a minute, is making these decisions and making sure to route the orders appropriately. All righty. So jumping right into Flxpoint real quick. Want to kind of show you, we have those warehouses on the left-hand side. Want to show you really what it kind of looks like in the Flxpoint side, looking at the sources that you're connected to. So I'm a retailer in this scenario, and I've got multiple warehouses I've connected via Shiphero, as you can see, to pull inventory, to send purchase orders, to pull shipment tracking. I also have different customers here or I should say supplier partners that I drop ship from, and that I've connected via different means, whether it's a file or some other method like an inventory source connection, whatever it might be. So the big thing to kind of see here is that, not only do you have these connected in one way to pull inventory, but also you might need to send purchase orders a different way. It might not all be done via API, depending on who you're working with. Some might be a file is pulled from inventory, but then you send orders via API or EDI. So we have it configurable there and flexible enough so that you're able to kind of connect. I'm not going to jump too much in this, but it's all kind of mapped in and easily set up, whether it's from our team or there's actually a self-service way to integrate files. I'll show you real quickly. The Shiphero API, it's all integrated, set up, turnkey. You just put an API key, but for those that you are pulling files from, we've got CSV file integrations, easily kind of mapped in, mapping templates, imports, different ways to connect very quickly with any of your dropship suppliers that you might be working with. manual upload is one option, but obviously you're going to want to receive this automatically from your supplier. So if they're sending emails or putting it on an FTP location, whatever it might be, easily kind of setting that up, mapping in the files with a mapping template, and running the integration. Really, I know this is big in Eric's space, running the integration as quickly as every 5 minutes, right? So pulling new inventory every 5 minutes, making sure when they have runs on a product to get that up to your website as quickly as possible. But then definitely different options as well on when you want to send POs and things like that can all be timed and are pretty flexible to set. So you build that integration from Flxpoint, you're pulling in that inventory. Really what you're getting from there, the net result is to pull in products. And so we're going to pull in products with full product data when we do have the options to do that. We're going to build them into a virtual product catalog as well, kind of combining those products, from the multiple locations into one. I'll show you kind of what that looks like. And the whole idea is that you're building this one central virtual catalog with multiple products, what we call source products, right? So that one product in your virtual catalog can be mapped to your Shiphero location. It could have a certain amount in stock there. It can be mapped to, your dropship suppliers. It can be mapped to your own internal warehouse. All that mapping is done automatically through our, UPC and NPN kind of aggregator, what we call the virtual builder. And you can really kind of see here real quick, just looking at one of these backpacks, that this one backpack that I'm going to push to my Shopify store, my eBay store, website, whatever it might be, with all its variant structure in place, is linked really to those two sources. As we saw earlier, those diagrams of the warehouses, right? So it not only exists in the US Direct warehouse, but also in Sports and Supply. Your own Shiphero warehouse could be here as well. They've got different, in this case, not so much, but different quantities, costs, things like that are all kind of aggregated and managed in a virtual product kind of way. And so these are then easily listed to multiple channels. You've got different mapping templates to set pricing. Not going to go into it today. It's kind of outside the scope of this demo, but that's kind of how you get the products in and how you get them pushed up and mapped across. The big part of this really is kind of showing the orders, right? So when an order comes in and how that kind of relates to distributed fulfillment and drop shipping, it's not as easy as just a traditional order where you might fulfill yourself. You've got an order here, and I'll kind of walk you through what this looks like, and I'll show you what's going on in the back end. But essentially, we've got the two different SKUs here that have come in from my Shopify store or BigCommerce store. I've got a channel invoice. This for the B2C side of things, it's simply just a receipt. It's whatever the shipping and the fees were, wherever they paid on the website. But in Eric's case, you can actually leverage this to set different dealer groups to automatically invoice, depending on the dealer, a certain fee, a certain shipping cost, right? A certain item cost, whatever it might be. You can dynamically generate this invoice and have it be deferred and paid in net terms. Really allows you for that B2B interaction, right? Versus strictly just a B2C. We're assuming everyone's checking out on a website. That's not the case, right? I mean, for Eric, he's receiving automatic inventory. If I go back to this real quick, he's receiving automated orders from emails and inventory source platforms and different manual checkouts where they might that might be the case where they might want to get a quote on what's their cost versus what another dealer's cost is. So that invoice comes into play from the B2B side of things much more. But if you receive B2C orders and it's all checkout through your BigCommerce store, it's all the same UI. It makes it really easy to run, what we call a mixed model of both B2B and B2C. And so once you get that order in, you've invoiced them appropriately. You then now need to split these order into multiple purchase orders. You can see in this case, it's going to two different suppliers or two different locations, one to US Direct, one to Sports and Supply. Those are automatically sent, whether it's via email or over an API connection. You're going to get tracking back in your fulfillments here. And lastly, you're going to get source invoices back from your suppliers that have statuses, that have the actual cost of the item. So really, once you get that item cost back from a dropship perspective, how much you sold it on your BigCommerce store, you're going to finally get a fully reconciled order here, knowing if this is profitable or not, which is a little bit easier said than done when it comes to drop shipping. A lot of times you have your own costs in your warehouse. You've got a cost that from your drop shipper who won't tell you, how much that loaded cost with shipping and fees and all that is until after you've ordered it. So getting that reconciled is definitely something we can help with and integrate and really automate just by connecting to the invoices. So that's an order. What's going on, the magic behind the scenes on all of that really is kind of the routing sides. So I've got 3 minutes and I'll kick it over to Nicholas. But to show you kind of what's going on in the order side, we jump to orders, we'll go to routing. You can see there's different, real quick, there's different rules you can set for putting orders on hold. You can only automate if you can take care of the edge cases as well, because otherwise you try to automate everything and things don't go according to plan. So if you can take care of the edge cases like international orders, stopping orders over a certain amount, maybe even identifying California orders, and by tagging the items that are California restricted and then looking for those on orders to stop them before they're automatically routed. Accounting for these edge cases allows you to truly fully automate. And then when you do get to the point of automating those orders, you've got a couple different routing groups we can create just to show for the default routing group for sake of the demo. When an order comes in from BigCommerce, you're gonna run through some routing priorities, right? So I've got my Shiphero warehouses over here. I've got, and in this case, you can configure a couple different ways. We definitely recommend Flxpoint being that central rules engine, because it factors in all these different, your dropship suppliers, your Shiphero warehouses. So you can really configure it either way. You can just send to Shiphero, and Shiphero can have some rules down the line, downstream to make some decisions, or you can really determine and route to specific warehouses using our rules engine. All depends on your setup. Typically, this is the ideal setup here to kind of route to the warehouse through ours. But really, what we're doing here is we're first looking and saying, okay, this order with 2 items, try to get it to a single source. I'd rather do that first than anything. I want to prefer that. If that can happen, great. If it can't, let's keep moving on either way. But we're going to prefer that versus require it, right? So once it does say that, okay, there's 2 different options. I can send the whole item to my warehouse. I'm sorry, the whole order with both items to my warehouse, or the whole order with both items to a dropship supplier. Move on to the next rule. Lowest cost, right? What is the lowest cost item? That's going to factor in the dropship fee that you've configured at a warehouse level. If you are charged dropship fees, it's going to, if you're using rate shopping on our Flxpoint Pro plan, it's going to factor in the actual real-time rates that we pull from UPS, FedEx, DHL, and factor that in as well. And then lastly, it's going to factor in the item costs, which might vary depending on, you're going to pay less for a wholesale purchase that you made in an item that you have in your own warehouse versus like a dropship item, right? So that's factoring all 3 of those to determine lowest cost. If it's not outside of a marginal amount of cost, they're all about the same cost, it's going to move on to preferred sources, which rank here, right? And I always want to ship from my warehouses first. And it's going to factor in California versus New York here because of the lowest cost. And then lastly, it's going to look for the shipping policies. So all of that is kind of the behind the scenes that is making those 2 POs, like I showed earlier, split and split appropriately. All the logic behind that is kind of the secret sauce of Flxpoint. And really in the dropship world and distributed order management world, that little bit of margin matters each time, not only from a cost perspective, but also customer experience. If you can ship it to a closer warehouse, you can squeeze some margin out and add some value to the product in general. It's going to be better for you. And then lastly, you've got the cross-docking ability to override addresses and ship it to your own warehouse. So all of that factored in, that's kind of the setup and what we typically see at a high level, and how we work with Shiphero and how you can kind of factor in your own warehouses that are on the Shiphero platform. So with that, I'll go ahead and I'll work through these slides for you if you prefer, Nicholas.
Yeah, that works. That's fine. All right, so hope everybody's doing okay. It's fascinating that I like all our different home setups. I imagine if we're watching, if we see other people's videos, we'd see some awesome home setups too. So I guess first off, I've learned a bunch of stuff, by the way, lads. So thank you. I would say that there were a couple of things that came up which we can actually answer and put into context of what we're focusing on at Shiphero. And to put it into context, logistics and supply chain and all other buzzwords and terms, it's a very complicated and deep world. There are lots of different areas of specialization. So for us, we made a conscious decision when we started out 7.5 years ago, out of our own frustration with poor software, that we weren't going to do everything. In fact, there's a lot of things here that Flxpoint is doing that really work well with what we're doing, because we simply don't do it. So it's awesome to have this system that can help us accomplish what we're focusing on. So we believe that good software should be simple to use, and things can be complicated. But if you're paying nerds like us money to provide software, one of the things that we should be solving is that complexity. So some of the stuff that we were looking at that Travis was just showing, I know of many large, more expensive platforms where that kind of thing involves consultants and lots of dollars being spent, as opposed to a user interface where you can just do it. And that's how we think in terms of our platforms. Next slide, Travis. It's weird saying next slide. So the two things that we do, I should note, one is fulfillment. As our own offering. This is really for customers, e-commerce brands. They could be just starting out. It's a side hustle, or they want to outsource their shipping, and fulfillment as a service is kind of a new thing that's emerging, as opposed to trying to go down the 3PL route. So typically 3PLs, when you work with a 3PL, there are not all are like this, but is typically been a space where it's they require contracts, minimums. It's kind of a black box. They're not very responsive. They're not natively technology companies. So that's one of the things that we've been really focused on, is thinking e-commerce merchant first. So that's taking into account things like speed and accuracy. Fulfilling lots of little orders is a very different challenge than taking truckloads of pallets in on one side of the building and out comes truckloads of pallets on the other side. And fulfillment should be an opportunity for actual customer happiness. And what I mean by that is the customer got what they ordered fast. They got the things that they actually ordered, and maybe there's some special treatment, with a lot of these platforms and how you can automate between Flxpoint and Shiphero. You're going to be able to automate things such as not only where the order is being shipped from, but how the order is handled as well. Maybe different packaging or a different box. So we have the two things. First off, the software. So our software is used by e-commerce companies to manage their own warehouses. And we also have 3PL software. So one of the things that we set out to do was to help 3PLs who are not natively technology companies have awesome tech, and be focused on e-commerce customers too. So, we're taking care of a lot. It's comprehensive, but sort of overall, obviously syncing with the sales channels and the input points of orders and inventory management. The automation, so talking about how one of the things that you mentioned earlier, Eric, as far as Shipstation. So I think Shipstation, another company with the word ship in it, by the way, so many of them. Shipstation is an awesome piece of software. If you're starting out, you've got some stuff and you just want to ship it out, and instead of going on to different websites and trying to figure out cheaper shipping labels, you can just print out shipping labels. Obviously, once you start scaling, and I think we're all witnessing in varied levels real changes that have been going on over the past few months due to more people shopping from home, not being able to go to a store. You start to run into interesting problems once you start to deal with scale. So one of the things that we've really focused on is we have this laser focus on everything that's happening in the warehouse. So you've got Flxpoint that's managing things across the network and nodes and from disparate data sources. And then you've got really from a software perspective, Shiphero is making sure that the software is streamlined and really easy for the people that need to get their stuff done in the warehouse. There's one of the things that we say a lot is the less thinking, the better. So it's, I know exactly where I've got to go. I know exactly what I've got to pick. I know exactly what I've got to put in the box. So we focus on that. Part of that is figuring out the cheapest shipping option as well. So we do the cheapest label and all that stuff. And then finally, the fulfillment, which I mentioned earlier. So we noticed, we launched a couple of years ago, the marketplace, marketplace.shiphero.com. I say that not as a plug, but just to show how uncreative we are when it comes to naming. But it was the idea of there are e-commerce brands that are trying to outsource their fulfillment. They're looking for 3PLs. Google 3PL, and you will see some of the worst websites in the world. So we decided, well, why don't we just take, we have 160 3PLs using our software. Why don't we put them all in one place so you can search for them, what services they provide, their ratings, and all of that stuff. And what we found when we launched the site was the majority of customers coming in were not big enough for a 3PL. So 3PLs typically require volume, at least a couple of thousand orders a month in order to be profitable. So when you are too small, you essentially have no solution. So we launched fulfillment, and a lot of what Travis has been talking about as far as distributed fulfillment models, we've really been focusing on that. And there's one of the reasons why we focused on the distributed model was actually something that Travis was saying earlier on, and that is shipping. So especially in the US, when you think about shipping zones and all of the complexity with that, and then you're like, okay, we got to figure out which warehouse to put things into if you have multiple warehouses. So we really focused on specifically on the fulfillment service of doing a distributed model where we're forecasting where inventory needs to be. We cross-dock, we put that inventory into the different locations. And the whole idea of it is essentially to localize your products. So when you're thinking about distributed inventory, it could be because you want to build resiliency, it could be because you're using different services. Another reason, which I think is going to become more prevalent as time goes on, is being carbon conscious when it comes to how your packages are being shipped. So a big thing that you can do is just not fly things to places. Planes are very carbon costly. I've been spending way too much time reading upon this stuff as we've been launching the service. But yeah, that's another thing to think about when it comes to a distributed fulfillment is if you are building your own network or spreading, you're essentially load balancing across your network, you can actually model it. And Flxpoint does a really good job of this. You could really model it where you're actually able to bring down the cost of shipping. Imagine that. So you're not doing zones 7, 8. You're sort of typically averaging zone 4, zone 5, which is fascinating. So that's something that we're really focused on.
And Nicholas, I wanted to bring up just that, the marketplace, just really because one thing that we determined when we were talking last week is, we realized that having a Shiphero WMS in your own warehouse is great and it's a quick, easy connection, but you guys launched this marketplace, allows you to now easily connect to any 3PL that is on the Shiphero platform. So, we always get people to say, well, do you recommend a 3PL to use?
Right.
I need fulfillment. And, now because we've built this integration, now we've got, you said 163 different warehouses that you can connect to and you can easily find here. So I thought that was helpful because I wasn't even sure about that when we initially talked if that was the case, but it seems like it is, and it definitely helps with that. You know, if you want to go international or if you just need a West Coast location to decrease that carbon footprint, you've got it right there by a quick and easy integration.
Yeah, and I think this is the radical change that we're seeing. So what we've seen over the past several years is the emergence of SaaS product. But you still have the old school players that are in the space. They've been doing it for years. They have their lingo. They have their words. But many of us are, we don't have the comfort of saying, oh, you know what? We're going to use this company. And what's the integration? Let's figure it out. Oh, it takes 6 months? Great. How much is going to, you just don't have the time. So you need to be able to move fast. And in some cases, it's also experiment. There is no done. Like we're all trying to figure stuff out that's flying at us, and we got to be able to, rapidly adapt to all the stuff that's changing. So to your point, we've seen a few merchants who have actually used our software where they do no fulfillment themselves, but they're using 3PLs that use our software, and they're building their own fulfillment networks, which definitely when we started this 7 years ago, I never imagined that, but it's amazing where things go. So yeah, it's a good point.
Now, did you want me to make you the host? Are you able to share?
Sure.
Jump in the warehouse. Let me see how seamless this should be. Let me know if it doesn't allow you. I can always
God,
switch
look at that ginger face. Let me see. All right. Let me know if you can see that.
Look at that seamless technical transition.
Wow, that's amazing. And the internet will break in 3 seconds. Okay, so yeah, I'll give a brief overview. So what we're looking at here is Shiphero SaaS. So this is if you're using software to run your own warehouse. So there's two sides to our SaaS product. There is you've got access to everything. So you're probably operations manager or running the warehouse. You need to be able to connect carriers, configure your shipping, all of that stuff. When we were talking earlier about sort of roles, so with Shiphero being so focused on e-commerce, things like B2B have not been our focus. Like our focus is you've got orders coming into the system. How do they get prioritized? What are we figuring out in the shipping? And they better get picked and packed accurately, and they get out the door. That is our focus, and we can do that in one warehouse or multiple warehouses. So really, when you're thinking about how the systems work together, we haven't tried to figure out everything that you guys over at Flxpoint have figured out. It's like we know precisely all these things that need to happen in a warehouse, and that is enough. Like there's so many things that you need to get right in a warehouse, especially when you're doing volume. So us trying to take on the world and solve everything else and do it poorly was never a decision of ours. So the idea here is that, I'm in my dashboard. I could, for example, so we talk about the automation or routing that happens at different nodes. Once it gets into a node, you can then do automation within that node. So how the order is treated, prioritize, set a shipping method, send a message, flag an order if you're detecting something wrong. So you can set those automation rules. But this interface here is really for someone who's managing everything. The interface, I'll show the warehouse allocation stuff in a minute. The interface that your pickers and packers are going to be seeing is more like this. So it's just laser focused. I see the orders. So this is the packing screen. I see my orders. I'm scanning a barcode, and I'm able to, let's see if I can load one of these up. So I would scan the barcode of the tote that's been picked into. Obviously, my test store has socks because I'm British. It's either that or Aston Martin's. And I'm able to scan those items. It's figured out, it's going to Michael Caine, of course. It's figured out the shipping label, and I'm just using a barcode scanner, and I'm just scanning an instruction to print the shipping label. That's going to send that information back to the source store. In the case of it coming through Flxpoint, that's going to go back to Flxpoint. Flxpoint is going to be communicating that. And then the final thing I'll show before everybody falls into a deep, deep coma is the what we call multi-warehouse allocation. So we're not as fancy as you, Travis. We don't have fancy names, unfortunately. So the multi-warehouse allocation is simply you have multiple warehouses. How are you allocating orders to those warehouses? So me and Travis were talking about this the other day. We're like, okay, there are some areas that both Shiphero and Flxpoint, they both do the same things. So obviously, if you're implementing both systems, one of the things to keep in mind is the solutions team members on both of our teams are going to be very aware of the overall setup and how best to utilize both systems for where you should have allocation rules and routing rules. So in the case of Shiphero, we have these multi-warehouse allocation rules specifically for our customers that they're connected directly to the store. They're doing some dynamic allocation between, maybe they have two warehouses, or maybe they have their own warehouse and they're using a warehouse that's using Shiphero. It's very Shiphero focused. And it's very similar in terms of what Flxpoint allows you to do. We probably don't have as many bells and whistles, but it's the same sort of rules. You have your conditions, you have your actions. It's figuring out which warehouse to go to. With Flxpoint, when we were looking through this and sort of saying, okay, if I'm looking at this as a solution, what is the difference? Shiphero is just about Shiphero. So Flxpoint is going way beyond that. So, for example, Shiphero does not have a native EDI connector at this point. We have enough customers now with all the pandemic stuff that are demanding that we add EDI. But we don't have a lot of the things that Flxpoint has outside of the world of Shiphero. So thinking about how these systems work together, you have drop shippers, suppliers, different nodes, different networks. You would use Flxpoint to essentially be the connector and router and the logic with what's happening based on what order came in or what inventory is being managed, what store is connected. And Shiphero really is that laser focused, okay, the order's in, we got to get it shipped. And I need to know in real time when that item or when that order has shipped, and it's being communicated back to the system as soon as it happens. And yeah, I mean, that's it. Obviously, I could talk for 16 more hours, but I'll stop there.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for kind of clarifying how the two systems set up. And really the big thing to take away from that is, our team is familiar with Shiphero. Shiphero's team is familiar with Flxpoint. Our teams will work together to get, you guys set up. And there's a lot of value in having a collaborative team like that versus, picking one solution, picking another solution, and then going from there.
Yeah, and we won't take 6 months to do it either. Like, we're very straight to, it's like there's so many things out there that are made so bloody complicated, and it doesn't need to be. So the idea is sort of, first off, understand the rules, understand infrastructure, where there could be potential opportunity in terms of additional nodes. And then it's ultimately laying out let's create the automation rules and the routing rules, which don't require coding. It's kind of refreshing.
For sure. So we do have questions right now. We got about 9 minutes left. If anyone has questions, feel free to just pop open the Q&A right there in Zoom. We'll wait for them to come through. The one piece that, just to hit on that, Nicholas, you mentioned, right? Like, we don't plan on building a WMS. I don't think Shiphero plans on building a logic engine, right? Like a distributed order management system. So, we really were excited about through showing these two solutions together, how they are plug and play, and they really do focus on, us kind of being that central hub and that routing logic, inventory kind of management system, and then Shiphero really doubling down and being like, the best WMS that they can, as well as now even added value in the fulfillment side. So I think there's anything to take away from it. You're kind of getting the best of both worlds with a seamless integration versus bloated ERP or something like that, where it does a little bit of everything not so great, which we've seen traditionally.
And I would say something else as well. So we're noticing more companies that are like cross-border. I know that's a whole topic to get into, which we won't. But we have a lot of customers that are trying to figure out cross-border and thinking about international shipping. So we do see a trend where companies obviously are not going to just go into a different company and a different country, sorry, a different geographic region, and go out and get real estate and set up a warehouse. So you're going to see more of this play where it's like, okay, we see companies out there that are using these technologies or will use these technologies. And what we can focus on, instead of thinking about integrations and building a stack, if, say, you're a 3PL or an e-commerce company, you can just think about how can I utilize infrastructure that's out there, this technology that's really quick to implement, and just have it solving, we see it a lot on the international shipping side where it's being used, and cross-border is a lot more complicated, but we're seeing customers that are trying to figure out international shipping. They're trying, in the US, thinking about Australia, or Australia thinking about Europe, so that's another area where this system can really come into play.
Yeah, certainly. All right, we got a couple questions coming through. So one of the first ones is, will your platform support a marketplace that hosts multiple vendors? So certainly, that's definitely the idea of distributed fulfillment and, having multiple vendors that can fulfill on a given order or just are on your website, right? We see a lot of that today where someone wants to build, an Amazon type model where they don't really actually, warehouse much. They're basically just a marketplace. So, Flexpoint would definitely handle that multi-vendor configuration. And then what we see a lot is as you start gaining, like Amazon does, really, once you start getting data and understand what's selling, unlike Amazon, you can maybe work well with your partners and say, hey, I'd like to buy wholesale from you versus, white labeling it or whatever it might be. But, you can actually then say, okay, I've got this marketplace. There's a quick, easy, cost-effective way, low-risk way to get up and running. I've gained some traction. I've gained an audience. And now I see that I've got a lot of sales in clothing or, in shoes or whatever it might be. And then you can go to your vendors in those departments and you can, warehouse them, set up your, get more margin, probably get, half of what it would cost to get drop shipped. You can get now in your own warehouse. So, and then that's where you'd implement a Shiphero. So we definitely do support that. That is part of kind of the Flexpoint, standard configuration. For Nicholas, we've got one here from Marty. It says, if I have my own store platform, how would I integrate marketplace products into it? So from two different people, it looks like similar kinds of questions, but how would I integrate marketplace products into it from their own store platform?
Yeah, I mean, there's an open API. So I think developer.shiphero.com, if you're looking at what your integration options are with Shiphero, it's GraphQL, and it basically allows you to do everything around inventory, orders. You can use routing, and there's webhooks for when an order status or an order ships. There's webhooks that are fired off of that as well.
Got it. We got another one that just come through. So would you set up everything for us on Flexpoint and Shiphero so that we just run the routine? Yes, this is actually a great question. I know on our side, we have recently rolled out professional services packages where, our team, this is all they do every day is help configure merchants with the dropship capabilities on our Flexpoint platform, with just, helping them integrate new dropshippers in general, just, really kind of just being experts in that, into kind of the do it for you type package. Nicholas, I'll let you speak to your guys' services if you have them around kind of the setup.
Yeah, so we typically charge $1 million a day for setup. I'm kidding. So setup for us, and everybody leaves. Setup for us is It's just part of the process. Like, I think it's very important, and that's how our teams work together. It's very important to focus on making sure we understand what it is you're trying to do. One of the things that we're also very good at is telling people that are looking at our system if we're actually a fit or not. Like, so you could have someone coming in, or you're trying to solve a problem. Maybe you're on this webinar and you're trying to solve a problem. You could do that with Flxpoint. You could do that with another system that's integrated with Flxpoint. It's not necessarily do you need Shiphero to do it. So we're very mindful of making sure we're a fit, just because no one wins when you're trying to use something that doesn't do the things that you need to do.
Certainly. Okay, so can you share? We could definitely share the presentation. We'll be sending out an email with a recording to this. We will also send, asking for steps on kind of what it takes to get started. We've got our two domains here, our two website URLs. So flexpoint.com/contact and then shiphero.com. Feel free if you got specific sales questions to reach out there. We've got both our emails up. We can definitely help with any questions you have. I know I'm more than happy to take those emails, get in touch with the right person. Nicholas as well. I don't know if I just put his email up there.
I can recommend good teas.
Yeah. So if you have any good tea recommendation or requests, he's got some for you.
I just want to add, Travis, that I don't want to put you on the spot or anything, but I feel pretty bad that Eric's picture is not up here. Like, if people are gonna have to stare at my ugly face.
You did put me on the spot. So.
I'm just an example. So
he's in here in spirit. But no, so we definitely, you guys can shoot us emails. You can shoot Eric email. I'm going to say his email right now for you. And so that all is, if you have any questions, we're good there. You mentioned, currency. So we do have a currency. Can I support Canadian currency, Canadian dollars? Things like that. Our question here. Looks like we're about up, but we can run over if anyone wants to attend past the 4 o'clock Eastern.
Embarrassing questions are good as well. If anybody.
Yeah, it's more embarrassing. Now we're past like
now we're in after hours.
Now we're in the after hours. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We'll grab that whiskey here in a second. Currency. Do you guys have that come up at all? I know we do have like the idea of setting yours in a certain currency. We don't have the conversion yet today. Do you guys ever have to touch on currency at all, Nicholas?
So we're essentially, yes. So we have different currencies. We're only showing the numbers that come in on orders. We're not an accounting platform. So we do things such as cost of goods, sales by SKU, dollar spent on shipping. But the currency is something that you set, but it's not like, I think, the same as what you're saying. We're not doing any conversions. And as far as the language as well, so there is no French version. Unfortunately, at this point, it's American English only. So even I get confused at times.
Yeah, there's Z's, no S's in the...
Yeah, I know. It's they say things very weirdly.
Cool. So last question we've got here as of right now. So I'm new to e-commerce, been drop shipping a little bit on Shopify. At what order threshold should I adopt this software? So if you're not warehousing anything, then obviously, no need for WMS. From a Flxpoint perspective, we typically look, we typically say just internally, if you're not doing 100 orders a month, it might not make sense. With that said, if you are doing 50 or 60 orders a month, then and it's too much to handle, then there's a possibility you could use it. But it really starts adding a ton of value at 100 orders a month. We have customers doing tens of thousands of orders a month, and they get a ton of benefit out of the platform, obviously, in automating those orders. But I would say do it. You don't pay for anything you don't need until you get to the point where I think both our software platforms are all about helping you scale. And so when you get to that point, that's when you'd really want to kind of reach out and get a demo or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and I would add that Shiphero, it is really comprehensive. So there's sort of economies of scale. And it's not as cheap as a Shipstation. So if you're doing lower volumes, I'd say don't consider Shiphero as your warehouse management system if you're doing typically under 50, 60 orders a day. Just because, maybe at that scale, especially if you're using FlexPoint, there's a lot of stuff that you're already figuring out and automating. And again, it can come down to the complexity of the orders, but you may not need the dynamic slotting and all of the bells and whistles that our WMS provides. And it's something, we speak to customers, we speak to people that are trying to figure this out, and we'll be very honest about it. So feel free to reach out, we can chat, but that's sort of the number I would put it up. And
if you're just starting, like Nicholas said, there's great platforms like Shipstation. I mean, Inventory Source is our sister company. It's really for the more SMB just getting started. So, an Inventory Source plus Shipstation kind of integration is probably more suitable if you're in that low order volume. And then, as you scale, as you get up to these higher order volumes, looking at a FlexPoint and Shiphero kind of configuration probably makes the most sense.
I would just like to chime in too, though. I mean, you guys are correct. However, it really depends on what your goals are as a business owner too. I mean, if you've got deep pocketbooks, I mean, why, and you're hiring employees and you're throwing a bunch of money into marketing. I mean, if you can afford it, I would just, and you think you have the market to, and the dealer and you're going to be able to get the revenue eventually. I mean, you can go for it and see, because that's going to give you the best chance of the success, and there's nothing wrong with, just trying it out and, see if you can get there, and then, going back to something less expensive, if it doesn't pan out. But
I think the good point they have there, Eric, is if you have employees. So, I mean, that's really, we have regular conversations with people that come into us and say, well, what's your price? Like, why are you so different than Shipstation? And I always, as a founder of the company, and, we're building all this functionality, and we're looking at these very expensive platforms, and we think we're competitively priced. But it's a good question, but I always had a difficulty answering it. I was like, I don't know. That's it's sort of the economics of building a team and building a company. But I think, to your point, definitely looking at how much you're spending in terms of labor and infrastructure and sort of general operations, and then looking at these tools and doing that analysis of, and a good example is for 3PLs. So we have a billing module, or just billing functionality in our software for 3PLs. So because everything is happening digitally, everything is tracked. And you put fees to everything. That's how 3PLs work. So if you pick something, if you pack and ship, there are fees for that. One of the most time-consuming things for 3PLs that we came across was you had someone that had to figure out from spreadsheets and all sorts of different data sources what the bill was going to be, what the invoice was going to be for each one of their customers every month, which we found really fascinating. So by automating that, you have a person, instead of being super slammed for 2 weeks of the month, now they're super organized. The system is automated. They've got all the invoices out within a few hours, and now their focus is maybe they're doing a relationship management, but you definitely have the ability to look at a cost model and say, what am I spending into, like, how much productivity do I have with my employees? If I need to grow, do I just keep adding more employees at the same rate, or can I grow without having to spend over here? Like that is a good point that you bring up. Yeah.
Certainly. Well, I appreciate everyone's time today for joining the webinar. It will be recorded and sent out if you want to share with any of your team members. Nicholas,
you see that? I just the question that Jamie has. Sorry, Travis.
Oh, yep. Sure.
So tax. First off, he shouted that, so it sounds more like a statement, and we all have to deal with it. But so I know that in Shiphero, again, we track all the information on the order that comes in. So it's a line item. We're tracking that. If you're creating purchase orders or anything like that, you can add that information. And if it's more of a statement, tax, bloody hell.
Yeah, same here. We're going to pull in the tax from the sales channel and pass it on through. And it can be converted through a rule at any point if necessary to, pass it on to your WMS.
Sorry, Jamie.
Okay, well, great. We got tax in.
Yes.
Our goals. All right. Well, hey, thanks again, Nicholas, Eric. I really appreciate it.
Very welcome. Thank you, James.
This is great. We'll send it out. And thanks again, everyone else. You all have a great day.
Thank you,
All right,
everybody.
thanks for having me.